want to recognize a few folks that are here with us this evening. First, I just want to welcome and thank Councilmember Don Knight is here in the back there. Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate you being here. And we also have, I believe the rule is once a council member, always a council member. So we have two of our formally council members here. And this is what you do after you get off council, just to let you know, Councilmember Knight. We have Jan Martin, who is the chair of our Garden of the Gods Foundation. So Jan, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And right behind her is Scott Hente, who is with the Friends of the Garden of the Gods. So that is what council members do. They come back and serve on boards and foundations and such. So we look forward to having you very soon. Not too soon, but very soon, Councilmember Knight. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. My name is Karen Pallas. I'm the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Director, and we've got a quick presentation. Myself and Ben Rasmussen with the U.S. Department of Transportation at the Volpe Center. We're your two speakers this evening, and then most of the work that we'll ask for you to do is to go from each of the boards, look at the ideas, give us feedback. We need you to wear two different hats. You got to put your, I live here, this is my hat, or if I was a visitor, this is my other hat, and give us those opinions and those thoughts and feedback, because that's really critical as we work through this process. I'm going to start this real quick. I also wanted to introduce, where's Kim King? Oh, there she is, way in the back. Kim King has been our project lead, so please thank her. She works really diligently with all the members to make sure we got all the boards and all the staff coordinated, so I really appreciate Kim's leadership on this project. We also have been working with a very large stakeholder group, and that's been really important to us in terms of all the different folks that work with us day in, day out. A lot of expertise out there, a lot of folks doing what we do, a lot of folks that help us do what we do on a regular basis. So it's important to have all of those folks. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of them, but if you represent any of those organizations, would you please stand real quick? Just to be recognized. Anything else? Thank you all. Appreciate it. Oh, here they go. We have a lady over there. Very good. All right, I want to thank them because they've really given a tremendous amount of time and talent and feedback to us already, and that's how we got here tonight. All right, what is our transportation study goal? And that is to improve the visitor experience while protecting Garden of the Gods Farm. So that was really our ultimate goal as we set out on this transportation study of gathering information, collecting ideas, and seeing what we may be able to do to improve the visitor experience throughout the entire year, not just the summer seasons, but throughout the entire year. Okay, so let me kind of give you a quick overview. As many of you know, the park is owned and managed by the City of Colorado Springs, and in conjunction with the Garden of the Gods Foundation. And so we contract with them. They support the garden and have done tremendous amount of work with us over the years. We sat down with them as we were looking at this transportation. We've heard a lot of comments about folks. We're seeing all of the cars queuing. We've heard from our volunteers how busy things are and how crazy sometimes the backup and the queuing gets. And so we sat down as we put together our proposal for projects for the foundation and asked for them to fund this study. And so we are fortunate to have that support. We are also designated, the park is designated as a National Natural Landmark, and that was done in 1971. And as many of you were sharing with me, we've seen significant increases in visitation, right? Just a little bit. We used to say there was 2 million visitors to the garden. That was just one of, I'll use Kurt Schroeder's really technical grab of how we did that attendance back in the day. Most of that came off of the information we got from Visitor Nature Center and such, and so that was helpful, and we kind of essentially doubled that. Well, now, based on having counters that were funded by the foundation, we are able to capture all of the vehicles coming into the garden, sometimes an occasional bicycle as well, depending on what it's made out of, keep reading. Those are the ones the metal ones we can capture. But we saw 5.8 million visitors last year. 5.8, and that is still with a few gaps in our counters working and such. So that is a significant increase in actually being able to capture that data and that information.
That's cars, right?
That is cars. But in terms of people, though, you have your cars, and it's 2.35 per car. And so think about that, because many of you deal with our visitors that come in with a 60-passenger bus or one of the Gray Line buses and such, and then some of you come by yourselves. So those numbers are, again, still the best guesstimate based on those number of cars coming into the garden. So thank you, great question. All right, what we did with the dollars from the foundation, we had successfully done a study for the Pikes Peak America's Mountain in terms of having Volpe come in and do a review of what shuttles would look like on the mountain. And based on that conversation, we had met Ben. It was the first time we had worked with him, and Kim and I are like, we need to do this for the garden. We need to get this information and capture it so we can have some ideas and thoughts for the future. So we were able to contract with them and put the U.S. Department of Transportation Volpe Center to develop those preliminary concepts, and you're going to hear a little bit about that. In August 2017, and many of them stood up here just a bit ago, our friends at the Garden of the Gods did a labor of love over the summer, and I think some very heated afternoons, but they captured 350 visitors and folks randomly in the garden at multiple locations to capture their expectations and their experience and give us some feedback on what we're doing well, what we haven't done well, what we could do better, and be able to capture that information. So that information study and those survey results are available on the website as well. We did release that in December, so that is available and out there for you all. So that was my quick overview. I'm going to ask Ben to come up and take us into the next couple of slides, and then I'll be back. Here we go.
All right, I'm going to run through a few numbers. First, just a little more of an introduction. I'm Ben Rasmussen. I'm the Public Lands Team Lead at the Volpe Center, which is part of the U.S. Department of Transportation. I did grow up in Boulder. I have been here a number of times as a kid, and then now as part of this study. It's always a pleasure to be back home in Colorado. So, as you all know, Garden of the Gods is an incredible gem of a place. It's one of the bigger city parks around. It covers over 1,000 acres and has 8.2 miles of roadways. And those roads can be pretty narrow. They can get congested, as you know, on busy days. As Karen said, visitation went up to about 5.8 million in 2017. As near as we can tell, based on the visitor center numbers, that looks like it's a doubling of what there was, at least at the visitor center, about 5 years ago. So that's a pretty significant increase in a short amount of time. During a peak summer day, so this is normally a weekend, normally a Saturday, sometimes a Sunday, you all can get up to 8,000 vehicles a day entering the park, using that multiplier of about 2.35 people per car. You get about 20,000 people. They're not all driving at the same time, thankfully, but there are some who park and they walk into the park. There are others who park who are lucky and they get a spot up in one of the parking lots in the park, but there are others who are circulating, looking for parking, and they're not able to find that, or they're not circling. They're stuck in a queue waiting to get into a parking lot or get out of a parking lot. On the note of parking, there is about 728 spaces, and that includes everything not only in the main garden, but also balanced rock and at the trading post. We found through the survey work that visitors spend about 2.5 hours. Some it's quicker, half an hour in and out. Maybe it's a quick jog in the morning. But others spend a fair amount of time, seeing every site, walking a lot of the trails. And through our analysis, we found that to meet that demand on those busy days, you would need to build about, or provide about 450 more parking spaces. And that would alleviate the queuing of vehicles backing up onto 30th Street, and that would also, everyone would have a spot. They wouldn't have to wait to get into a parking lot. All right, so what we're looking at in this summer is in line with some of what you've seen on the boards, and we're taking your thoughts here. We're going to formulate some plan for this summer. And if overwhelmingly we're hearing, oh, let's not do anything, let's just try to muddle through, you know, the congestion another summer, we could try that, but we want to try to be proactive. We want to try to get ahead of this, well, this growing tide, I suppose, and we thought, let's test something out, a voluntary shuttle service that would run just up and back on Gateway Road. It would be just for the summer months, and the idea is that it would pick up at Rock Ledge, go to the visitor center, so that people who haven't been to the park before, they could stop at the visitor center, get information, and then it would go back up into to that T intersection with Juniper Way Loop and Gateway Road, and do a turnaround and come back down to Rock Ledge, and around, it would go all day. There would also be an ADA accessible trail to the north side of Gateway Road. I think you saw the schematic plan for that. We also thought, let's try maybe a couple car-free days or mornings or afternoons. A number of other national parks and national forests do this, and people seem to really like it. It gives people an opportunity to see the park in a way that they've never seen it before, where you have the whole road to yourself to kind of enjoy the day. No matter what we do, assuming that we do something, we'll need a very strong marketing plan. We want to let people know, hey, this is an option available to you if you want to use it. We want to try to hopefully create a very sustainable plan for the future that reduces the congestion, the pollution, and the impact on the natural area, and works for visitors and for locals as well. And with that, I will turn it back to Karen.
All right, before we let you loose back on the boards, I just want to cover a few items with you. As I mentioned, there's multiple documents. There's this PowerPoint, there's also the study in its entirety that's available on the website, and I believe everybody received this that has the information on the bottom. So you'll have access to the report. There's the survey data as well, so all of that information is available for you to peruse and take a look at. And tomorrow morning we'll also have, for those of you that were not here tonight, or you have friends that wanted to be here tonight but couldn't be here because there's a lot of things going on in this town on a regular basis, to encourage them to please seek those documents out and give us feedback and information on those. We want to get as much details and thoughts and ideas as possible. For those of you that are here, though, I think Kelly was handing out as you walk through, you do have, besides the responses that are in and around the room on the boards, you have this individual response form as well. If you'll complete that and leave that in the basket on your way out, that'll be great. And also, if you want to include your email address on that, we can keep you informed with what we've got going on. And I believe everyone received one of these as well. It kind of just gives you the highlights. So if you knew somebody that wanted to be here, I know there was a lot of FOG folks that couldn't be here that wanted to be here, but if you want to take a couple of those back, you're welcome to do that as well. There's information on by the numbers, potential outcomes are listed, our overview, and survey findings. So please take an opportunity to review that material. There's been a lot of work over the last several months putting this together and working with the stakeholders and with the community members, and again with the survey data that we collected, thanks to our Friends of the Garden of God. So I want to thank you all for that. The boards are all there. You see the staff, they're all lined up in the back. They're there to answer questions at each of those boards, give you a chance to dig a little deeper individually. You do have your dots. You've got yellow and green. Again, I just want to remind you, do them in both scenarios. I live here and I love this park and it's my park. And then also, hey, I'm visiting from out of town. What would I think differently maybe about if I was going to, like when you travel, you go to different places, right, and you get a chance to experience that. What have you experienced that may be beneficial for us to take back as well? So you have that opportunity to put those votes up there on the board, and then I mentioned the comment cards, and then this is again where the website is with the study itself with all of those details and information. And so before I let you go, are there any specific questions that's good for the group before we get you to back up individually for Ben or myself? Yes, sir.
You were talking about the millions that come in and out of Garden of the Gods, and this is not very many people here. So how did you advertise for this?
We follow our normal process for advertising. We send out a news release that gets pushed out to all of the media outlets. We also advertise on our city's website and out to our different stakeholders and such.
Will you be paving the parking lot for this proposal this summer? Is that what you plan to do?
There would not be any paving this summer, no. And if we would pave anything at any point in time, we'll go through a full-blown conversation and assessment of that. It's very dramatic. Yes, ma'am.
Well, when the Rockledge is having all their activities, how could that affect the people who are going to park there, just who want to go into the garden? Because they have sometimes an awful lot of people there for Shakespeareans and different things that they really use quite a bit of that parking. Who would have first choice?
Rockledge would have first choice. And so Andy's very happy I said that out loud. But yes, we're well aware of all of those events and we take all of that into consideration as we go through that process. So, thank you. Very good question. Andy, you're welcome. Yes, sir?
What do you anticipate the total cost of the pilot to be?
That we're still determining. That's why you all are here, because we're looking at a variety of different vehicle options. We want to get your feedback on that, and that will obviously determine what those costs could potentially be. We're looking at how do we utilize the current roadway system versus potentially some minor improvements. A full-blown improvement is about $500,000 at the T intersection, so we want to make sure that it's the right solution before we would head down that road.
Will you factor in the cost of the land?
The land?
Yeah, so you're going to use, what, 5 acres for parking? You know, if that gets turned, you know, instead of being part of a park, it now becomes a parking lot. You factor in the cost of that land, and that land was purchased with donations from people to the city in order for it to be preserved. So now you're reallocating it to being a parking lot.
Well, I'll take that under advisement in terms of looking at that methodology. That typically, because we own that as a city, we haven't taken that account to other parking lots and things within the property
But
itself.
you're communicating with donors that you're going to turn the land that they donated to the city into a parking lot.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, sir.
If a shuttle system goes in, would that involve closing off any of the other roads leading into the park? I'm specifically asking about Ridge Road.
About Ridge Road? Well, and those are still some of the things to be determined, depending on which shuttle system we use, whether we eliminate cars completely, whether we do a modification of that. There's a variety of options, again, in the back that if you look at those and give us your feedback, that's what we would have to determine. We still are in that gathering information stage. We've got a lot of details based on information in terms of what we gathered from the community last summer, but there's still a lot of things to work out.
Okay, so I think your answer is that if a shuttle system goes in, Ridge Road may be closed off.
Not necessarily, and you'll see.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, if you look at the different routes and things, there are multiple opportunities, and we are nowhere near any of those conversations, I can assure you. Anything else before I release you?
I read in the whatever was available to the Friends of Garden of Dogs before this meeting, and it seemed like you were very optimistic about this Phase A, and that it'll do the whole loop to the T and back in what, 10 minutes or something? I've been on shuttle buses in national parks, and you get elderly people, you get mothers, strollers, 3 kids, 5, you know, grandma, the whole gang, want to sit together. I mean, it is, loading and unloading is just unbelievable long. Especially language difficulties, they don't even understand where they're going, you got to talk to the bus, they're abandoned. I just think you're not, if that's going to be a half hour, just getting to the T and doing all those stops, the turnaround and back in Phase A. Yeah, realistically.
And you've got exactly why we would do a pilot program. So we could kind of iron out some of those things and experience that. Is it going to be a lot longer than what we anticipated? Does it help reduce the number of cars in the garden? We're going to look at all of that and make sure that we've got the right pilot to go forward. But again, we can't do, it's one of those things where we can't not do anything. That's not a solution. We are, you all know, you are out there in the park day in, day out. You work with the visitors at the desk. You know what that volume has been like. And so we want to make sure we give some folks some alternative opportunities to do other things, come a different way into the garden. And so that's why that pilot is, and that's one of Kim's favorite terms, is pilot program. So we'll look at that and see, and all the stars need to align so we can make sure those pieces come together. But again, it's an opportunity to learn from that. And I know there's been some concern about that. If you go too small, will it really give you enough information to base your decision? But again, we need to do something, and so you all are here to help us and help figure that out as well. So, okay. Yes, ma'am.
It just occurred to me that one possibility that I didn't see anywhere would be a bike, either rental or just bike share for people, and this is why, especially the tourists who come in, but they ride bikes. So instead of a shuttle, they could ride a bike from the visitor center or someplace. Is that, I didn't see it anywhere.
That is a great idea, and that will be happening this summer. In fact, Jan and Linda are both shaking their heads. They are putting together a contract for that purpose.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
So I could just
add that on there, make sure we got it. But yes, no, great suggestion. Yes, ma'am.
Can you help us understand kind of the timeline? So this summer we'll roll into a pilot program. Are there a number of phases? And then when do you anticipate full implementation?
We are still in the infancy stage, so we would like to, our goal was to try to put something in place by this summer, and there, again, a few things have to align with that, with our contracts and agreements and those kind of things. So we would have more information, but I won't have it for you tonight. So again, that's what this purpose was, is to hear, maybe there wasn't, Ben's really good, but maybe there was something that Ben or our stakeholder group hadn't thought of that you all could bring to the table and give us feedback on.
Well, I think the way you should start is by charging for parking. Do that. Don't even do the shuttle. Just charge for parking. Then people will not, queue up to get parking spots.
And that is on the board in the back. Please make sure you vote accordingly. We'd love to hear that feedback. Appreciate it. And if you would take the time to fill out the comment card as well, I think that would be really helpful. And there's one lady in the back, and I'll come right up to you, sir. Go ahead.
Has any thought been given to a long-range program rather than just the pilot, of maybe putting in an additional lane in that the shuttle could use? Because I volunteer Saturday morning, and it's just bumper to bumper from the entrance to the parking lot, and the shuttle isn't going to be able to get through that traffic.
What she asked is that there's been thought in terms of the long-range planning as well, and there has. We're trying to figure out what solutions may present themselves, and really our challenge is, where do we put folks and then bring them to the garden? And so we're doing some further assessment on that, looking at all of those options, and again, trying to hear from you all, because if we put something so far out that folks aren't willing to get on a shuttle bus and aren't willing to come into the park that way and be on foot, what would the alternative be? They're going to go back into their vehicles. And so we're looking at all of those, because this isn't a short-term solution. We have to find a long-term solution to preserve the park and to create that great visitor experience, which we all know and love. When we're in there first thing in the morning, it's amazing. You're by yourself and it feels really good. But by 10:30, if that, on a Saturday, usually by 9:30, you're backed up, the parking lots are full, and we're all enjoying the view of the car in front of us. So our goal is really to look at that long term, but we wanted to try to find a couple of pilot solutions that might be helpful to kind of get us going and see how that works out. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Since this is transportation, you are planning a direct in, or easy in, easy out for emergency vehicles, fire, police. Since you haven't stopped the smoking in the park, that might be a simple plan for right now.
Oh, in terms of our emergency vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we do. We have the bike lane that sometimes becomes the car lane, but we prefer it to be the bike lane. So we do have some accessibility with our emergency folks to get in, and the fire department has been part of this conversation as well. So thank you.
How are you progressing with the smoking in the park?
How are we progressing? Well, it's one of those things, you hope people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and following those rules, but we know our ranger staff end up dealing with folks, I know our police folks end up dealing with folks, and so do our volunteers, but we're, you know, you have to have some responsibility for following the rules. And
Makes you wonder what senior management of the city of Colorado Springs learned from 2 major fires and are, because my house is going to be burned down if that park catches on fire.
And that is one of my fears, most definitely. Thank
And
you.
I'd have to thank Colorado Springs started council and work up or down.
So we hope people take personal responsibility for following the rules. So, yes, ma'am. Did you have a, oh, you should have camera. Okay. Anything else before we go? And I'll send you back out to the boards and an opportunity to talk with the staff and get further information. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't say anything about closing the park at night, so those kids are driving around. Are they gonna do that? Is that something planned?
We will go through that process. Right now, we're in the, we put gates up in, at Ridge Road, back on Balance Rock, Trading Post area and such. The only thing we haven't done yet is we haven't finished the design to do the front. And we're kind of waiting on that because of the 30th Street. We want to make sure whatever we do doesn't interfere with what 30th Street doing. But it does give us the ability now for staff to close for snow, for emergency incidences and those kind of things. But we eventually would like to close the gates at night. We've heard that a lot from the community in terms of that night traffic and the issues that are happening. And I said this to council earlier today, that my father always told me nothing good happened after 9 p.m. So we'll look at that. But it's not an imminent thing, but it does give us the flexibility right now to close some of those areas, but not the front gates at this time. So thank you, excellent question. So
if you close the gate, how is emergency vehicles going to be there?
the emergency vehicles would have access. They do with our other parks that have gates and stuff as well. So, okay.
What is the status with the gates?
We have 3, 4 gates now total.
What was the question?
How many gates?
Well, we've got 3 in place right now.
3 in place right now, and we have the front gate that still has to be ironed out.
You know, we've been talking about that for a couple of years.
Yeah. And we have to, one of the reasons we held off on that is the 30th Street renovations, to make sure how that's going to impact where that gate might go. So, but thank you. Okay, anything else? Oh, one more.
I think one thing to say, this is a really challenging issue, and so one of the assumptions in this model stated that parking would remain open during service, but people would have to pay for parking. And I get that as an assumption, but also given that the city was conveyed this land and free and open to the public, just discussion around that issue, it's challenging to charge some users, not other users, parking users. I don't know what, but just discussion around that would be good.
It's just, I mean, in terms of the deed restrictions and our promise to the family is access has to be free. So you can't put a gate in charge to go into the park, but could we charge for parking that is available to us? And so I'm going to point him out real quick. This is Daniel Bowen, who's one of our Parks Advisory Board members, and then Mina Liebert's in the back too, one of our Parks Advisory Board members. She's our chair. So I want to thank them both for being here, and it's a great question. Appreciate it. Okay, you guys have work to do. Go place your dots out there on the boards, talk with staff, give us feedback and information, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. Thank you.